What is up, you guys? It is your boy Phoenix Brenton here, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we are going to be doing my NFC South grades for the 2025 to 2026 season. Now, before we get today's video, like and subscribe. We are on the road to getting to 700 subscribers. But anyways, enough said. Let's get into the video. So obviously, I got to talk about how the grading system works before we get to the actual teams. Obviously, you have the record, the expectations, injuries gives you a bit of pity points, and strength of scheduling. So I mean by specifically, how was their schedule in particular. But anyway, enough said. Let's get into the video. And starting off, we have the New Orleans Saints. And this was a very, very weird one to talk about because it's like the Saints weren't really that bad a lot of these games. Like, that sounds weird, I know, but they really weren't. Like, yeah, Arizona, a lot of people like to crap on Arizona, but like they were very close in a lot of games this season. The Niners, they made it to the playoffs. They played very close against them. Obviously, then that they got destroyed to Seattle, but then they played awfully kind of close against the Bills. They beat the Giants. They played close against the Patriots. They played close to somewhat against the Bears. They did, though, lose to the Bucks by a lot and the Rams. But then they beat the Panthers. And they lost to the Falcons. Then they lost close against the Dolphins. Then they beat the Bucks. Then they beat the Panthers again. Then they destroyed the Jets. Then they beat the Titans. And then they lost to the Falcons barely at the end. Do you kind of get where I'm getting at right now? You know, it's like this team was so weird all year. And you really can't say, like, injuries were part of the problem, because they kind of weren't. But it's like this team is just so weird all year. Like, they ended very well. They did a really good job. Like, I feel like this was such a weird team to talk about. Like, this team was very... I don't even know mediocre is the right word. Like, they weren't bad. They weren't mediocre. But they weren't good either, you know? It's like such a weird team to talk about. But obviously, they surpassed my expectations, which this was going to be one of the worst teams heading into the season. And, I mean, for sure, they 100% surpassed those expectations. So I feel like I gotta give this team, like, a C minus, or, yeah, I'd say a C minus grade. I think this is a very fair grade for a team that just didn't really had a lot of expectations heading into the season, but they look a little promising for the 2026 season, to be honest. Then the next team on my list, we have obviously the Atlanta Falcons. I can't believe that if the tiebreakers didn't exist, there was a three-way tie with the NFC South division with an 8-9 record. I am not kidding. That's actually what happened. And funny enough, I'm not even kidding. If they won week 1 against the Bucks, they would have won the entire division. I'm not kidding. That literally could have happened. Or even beat the Panthers back in week 3. Just, well, obviously, literally, if they win any game, they would have won, but you get the point. But Falcons, I have very low expectations with this season, and I knew Raheem Morris was going to get fired this year after the season, which, guess what? He did. So, at least I guess one of those correctly. But I wasn't expecting them to have a bit of a turnaround during the end of the season. I mean, I feel like not a lot of people like to want to talk about their turnaround during the end of the season. They won their last 4 games, which were against the Buccaneers, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Saints. Which, yeah, the Cardinals may not be great, but the Rams, they're in the NFC Championship game. The Bucks nearly made it to the playoffs. And the Saints, they had a very good end of their season. So I do feel like they had a very solid end of the season. But then you go look at these last 4 weeks. It looks, well, actually the last 2 weeks, and it kind of changes the story for you. They get destroyed by the Seahawks, and then they lost to the Jets. This is such a weird team. And then you look at the 4 weeks, and afterwards they beat the Falcons. They lost to overtime against the Panthers. Then they lost to overtime again against the Falcons. They lost barely to the Patriots. And then they got destroyed by the Dolphins, and then they lost to the Niners. It's like, this team is so weird. They even beat the Bills during the season, as weird as that might sound. Like, this team is so weird to talk about. And I think I gotta give this team, like, a C. They did beat my expectations, right? And there were injuries, but I feel like I can't really credit them enough to give them, like, a C plus or something. It's like, yeah, I had them better than the Saints, but not by much. So that's why I have the Falcons there. Then we had the Buccaneers, which this is one of the few teams I actually predicted their record, which was 8-9 record, funny enough. And this team started off very hot, by the way. Like, they started off 3-0, then they lost to the Eagles, which, to be granted, during that time, they were one of the best teams. Then and then 2 weeks later, they're 5-1, but then they lose to the Lions, which makes them 5-2 and a little bit of questioning. Then they're 6-2 after beating the Saints, and then they went 2-6 or 2-7 ever since. I am not kidding when I say that. They went 2-7 because they lost to the Patriots, Bills, Rams. They beat the Cardinals barely, but then they lose to the Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins, and then they beat the Panthers in week 18 and lose. Not kidding when I say that. So yeah, to be fair, it was a very tough second half schedule, but it doesn't give you the excuse to be 8-9 though. Like, it really, really doesn't. Like, there are a lot of easy games that they could have won, but they just didn't. And that's kind of why they fell apart. I am going to give this team a C-. I feel like it's a very fair grade for a team that just didn't have a great season. The reason why I'm giving this team a C- while they're 8-9, while the Falcons were also 8-9, well, they got a C, is because of expectations. This team had a higher expectation than the Falcons. Jonathan kind of wants me to give them a D+, which actually I'm going to give them a D+, because this team should have made it to the playoffs. They should have won the NFC South, but they didn't, which is the reason why I can't give them a C or higher, is because of that reason alone. And then they have the Panthers. The Panthers are kind of around the same boat to me as the Falcons, but the fact they actually won their division is a little bit more different, and they had a very close game against the Rams, and they beat the Rams as well during the season, but this team was another just weird team to talk about, because this team got destroyed by the Jaguars in week 1. Then they lost to Arizona in week 2, but then they destroyed the Falcons in week 3. Then they got destroyed by the Patriots in week 4. But then they then they started to build a little bit of a win streak against the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Jets. But then they had injury Bryce Young, which made them got destroyed by the Bills. But then they beat the Packers. But then they lose to the Saints, and then they beat the Falcons again. Then they lose to the Niners. Then they beat the Rams, and they lose to the Saints, and then they beat the Bucks, and then they lose to the Seahawks, and then they also then lose to the Bucks, but they still make it to the playoffs, but then just lose to the LA Rams regardless. So you kind of could see what I mean. It's like this team, first half, probably would have gave this team like a D, but like the second half, I'd probably give this team like a B- grade. Which is why I think the best way I could say this, I would probably give them a C+. They did beat my expectations. They won the division, and they played a very close game against a team that's still in the playoffs right now. I think it's very fair to give them a C+, and I don't feel like it should be anything a B, mainly because, again, they didn't have a winning record, and they didn't win a playoff game. I think that's a very fair for what has been a very laughable division. Genuinely. So there are my final grades. I give the Saints a C-. I give the Falcons a C, Bucks a D+. Actually, I kind of want to give them a D, but I'll give them a D+. And the Panthers, I give them a C+. So literally everything ranged from a D+ to a C+ is what I give this entire division. I'm not kidding when I say that. But anyways, guys, I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's not a lot I really have to say about all these teams. I mean, there are a little bit of bright futures ahead, a lot of these teams, like the Panthers, Falcons, and Saints. I mean, the Bucks, maybe, but not, I feel like, as much as, like I said, for the Panthers, Falcons, and Saints. So, to be determined. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace.